What is going on, ladies and gentlemen and creatives? Welcome back to the Creative Journal podcast. I'm super excited to be in your AirPods today or your Bluetooth compatible hearing aids if you're like me. For this episode of this entry of the Creative Journal, we have a great guest, and her name is Mrs. Carla Treadway. Wait till you guys hear from this woman. She has done so much for me and so many other young entrepreneurs that when researching guests for the show, I just knew this was someone I had to talk to and kind of share our backstory and what she does at the University of Findlay to help young, creative, entrepreneur, business-minded people get started. And she has a lot of value she can provide to young creatives, especially those like myself. So a little bit of backstory on Carla. She is the mother of 4 amazing children. She's a wife to a husband who allows her to start businesses, follow her dreams, and take time to inspire others. That is awesome. She's a lifelong learner with an associate's degree in physical therapy assisting, a bachelor's in healthcare administration, a master's in organizational leadership with an emphasis on health and wellness, and she's currently working on her doctorate in education. For her dissertation, which this is super interesting, she is researching the perceptions of small business owners on education and small business survival. So as a young, independent creative starting their own creative business, this is something that she may know a thing or two about. So stay tuned to learn a lot from this episode. She started her business, which was a gym, back in 2015, and she now has 2 locations. So that's super interesting, and she is not just one of those people in higher education who just has this book knowledge, as they say. She is on the streets, and not on the streets, but she's doing the business stuff in the real life, and she's been successful at it, and she can use that to help her students, which she does, and it's very applicable, and it's super useful knowledge, as you guys will see in this episode. She uses all her experience in marketing, entrepreneurship, and business development and administration to help her students at the University of Findlay, where she's an assistant professor in the College of Business. She started this resource at Findlay called the Brite Center, where students can come in and they schedule times to meet to pitch her their creative ideas and get help for their businesses, which is exactly what I did, and I'm super glad. So a little bit of backstory on Carla, how we first met. I knew she was a resource at the University of Findlay in the Brite Center, and the Brite Center is a place in the College of Business at Findlay where I went to school, now graduated. But it's a great place where business students can go and study. It's kind of a safe space for high performers who need help starting their business. And it's a great resource to kind of bounce ideas off of one another, really put in work, and just do the best they can and get all the help they need. So Carla is great at providing business and entrepreneurial advice to young creatives, and that's what she did for myself. She helped me. She gave me the backstory of, initial marketing strategies, creating funnels, and just getting me off the ground, which I can't say thank you enough for. I owe her a lot, and having her on the show is just a very small way to say thank you, because I should be thanking her because she gave a lot of knowledge in this episode. But expect to learn, among other things, the first steps and how to monetize as your skills as a creative, the first steps to getting started as a creative service provider, and just what it means to be a creative entrepreneur. So I'm super excited to share this episode with you guys. This is entry 10 of the Creative Journal podcast. That's crazy. I thought we were just getting started. We really still are. But without further ado, please welcome to the show, Mrs. Carla Treadway. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Really excited to do this, actually.
Yeah, we're really glad to have you. So just to give this conversation a little bit of context, I wanted to reflect on the time when we first met. I think it was almost 2 years ago now. I came to you with the idea of starting my own graphic design company. And a big reason I wanted to have you today was just thank you for what you did for me that day. I'm not sure if you remember that, because I know you meet with a lot of students. But that day you gave me the fundamentals. I still have the notes in my journal. You told me how to get an LLC, how to get an EIN, how to get everything certified. and get squared away. We did kind of like a social media audit, how I was getting, top of funnel sales, and really helped me take a step back and kind of look at where my leads were coming from. And it was one of the most helpful things that I've done so far. And it really showed me the value of using the resources that are on campus and, anywhere, just having that third eye, and obviously someone that knows as much as you just really helps. So just to give us a little backdrop, I wanted to say thank you.
That was a big lump in my throat there while you were talking, because starting my own business, I had to go through everything myself. And that's why when someone comes to me and has that ambition and that willingness, and I could see that, I remember meeting with you. And I thoroughly remember going over like, well, let me just see what you have. And we looked up what you have online. I mean, we kind of went into that ambition full force, like, all right, show me what you got.
Yeah.
And for you to receive all that well and then turn it into a positive is wonderful. But sometimes it takes a little bit more time than that. A lot of people have to stew on it and think about it and kind of get the gumption to want to do it. But you had that ambition, and so I'm so glad you ran with it.
Well, thank you. Well, it wasn't, by no means was it a pat on the back. You're doing great. It was very constructive, and I think that's a big wake up call that I needed, just because it is just, you get beat down a lot, as I'm sure you know, and hopefully you can share with us today some of your experiences. But you feel like you're doing all these things right and you're putting all this time in. And if you're kind of setting up the ladder on the wrong wall, so to speak, then you're not even giving yourself a chance. So I think for the students at Findlay, having a resource like you just is very helpful. So can you give us a little bit of backdrop on kind of your career path, how you got involved at Findlay, your own business? What give us kind of the big picture, like how, what gives you?
Because if we went into the
Go ahead.
details, it would take quite some time. But I actually have a healthcare background, and I really wanted to step out on my own. And that's that feeling that most entrepreneurs have. Like, I do things well enough that I don't need someone else kind of guiding me. So that took me from being a physical therapy assistant with a bachelor's degree into like, well, I want people to want to see me. And I really like some of these other things like personal training. So I got certifications above and beyond my licensure. And then found out that, personal training at locations, you pay them to train and then you make less. So I'm like, well, how can I just make all of that money and schedule when I want? And because if you're competent, if you realize your competence, I feel like there's a turning point where you're like, I'm competent enough to do this by myself, or I have the drive, or that light turns on of, I could do this better, like the scheduling of my clients. So then I looked into, well, what does it take to start my own business? And that I wanted to affiliate with CrossFit because it has like a training certification that was, well-grounded and followed some of the PT things that I really keep as a foundation of my personal training, which is high quality. And so I want to do things the best I could, even if it was at a small scale. So started a business. Like I said, I didn't have the help. I don't know if I even looked for help. I just looked at, how do you do this? And the internet is a great resource. So like, I think I told you that too, when you came in, like, you can look all this up. You can look up how to get your federal ID. You can look up how to get your state name, your DBA, but let me tell you how to really do it and the steps, because there is a method to it. So I learned kind of the hard way, not in a bad way, but it's like, it was hard. It's like, okay, what's the next step? So, because I went to the bank. I'm like, I need to start a bank account. And they're like, well, you can't do that without your federal ID. So just that one experience I use as a stepping stone to help my students. So, tying that back into, I had to do that on my own, all that trial and error. But I still maintain that gym that I started, was that 7, 8 years ago? I don't want to count how many years. It's been a while, 2 locations. So going outside of some statistics that I'm learning about now with my doctorate, researching some education and experiences that help small business owners succeed. And then actually I was not bored, but I was like, I can do more. I have a master's degree. What am I doing? I'm just running a gym, and I thought I could do more. And I saw a part-time teaching job. It was through a county service to help other adults start businesses. So I did that part-time and ran into Kirby Overton and was just talking about my passion and how I got there in this path that I'm explaining to you, and some of the hardships that some of the students had and how I helped them overcome them. And she's like, we need someone to teach entrepreneurship. Do you think you want to do that? And I'm like, oh, that's it. This is a self-fulfilling, like I always wanted to do teaching, and this is kind of segued into where I'm meant to be. So I really have to give a shout out to Kirby. She saw my potential just by just sharing what I love doing or what I've done and the hard work I put into it, and then said, here's the opportunity. So that's how the university started. And now I'm a full-time assistant professor in the College of Business. I teach entrepreneurship, business communications, marketing classes. And I love doing those too, because I take real small businesses that are having challenges, probably just like yourself and myself. Like, you don't have time to do the marketing when you're doing the work. So in my marketing classes, I bring in the small businesses and say, let us help you with the marketing. And it's such a full circle, happy thing. I thoroughly enjoy it. But I did see the deficit at the University of Findlay, where we have students who are already in business. You can say you were already in business. Yeah. And they just like, we're sending them to resources that other adults that have a hard time getting started are going to. Why didn't we have on the resource here on campus? So I was in a big room. I was still adjunct, and pitched it to them. Like, we need a entrepreneurship resource center. And like, then people are like, well, what would you do different than the SBA? And I think this is a waste of time. And who says you know what you're doing? And so, I mean, it was good conversation. And I wasn't sure leaving that meeting, like what was going to happen. But then pandemic hit, and it actually took a year for Kirby to call me back and say, let's look at this. I'm the dean now. She actually wasn't even the dean at that point. She's like, I'm the dean. I love the idea. We need to make things happen in the College of Business. And I'm like, yes, I'm a go person. Let's do this. Let's at least try. Mm-hmm. And since then, I've had yourself and others that it opens that door to, like, I don't care if you're already in business. I don't care if you're just excited about a business, if you need to do anywhere on the spectrum of idea to implementation to I've already tried it and we've had problems, mm-hmm. can come to me, and I'm a resource. If I can't answer your question, I'll at least try to find the person or the resource for you. Mm-hmm. So that's how the Brite Center here at the university got started. But marketing has been slow, and by word of mouth. I'm really glad you found me. Actually, I don't remember how you found me or got sent to me, but there are students who are sent to, like, the professor for business law, and she's like, well, I can help you understand the laws and policies, and I had a student who was kind of like bounced around, maybe 4 or 5 people. Like, I don't know if I can help you start that business because I only know, like the taxation part. So I had a student come to me after that, and they're like, can you help me? And I'm like, sure, let's go. And they have a successful clothing online store that's what is it, like not antique? I can't think of the right word. Like used older clothes that are back in style.
Yeah, kind of like retro.
Yeah, and they do great. Mm-hmm. And I use them in my marketing class, where I'm like, hey, how you doing? And they're like, great. I'm so glad that we met. And because they didn't know if they needed like a retailer license or a vendor's license with reused clothes, like repurposed clothes. So it's a learning process for me. I am not the know-all, say-all at all, but I am willing to learn. And each student who comes in and I help them, with their path, wherever they're at, I gain something from that, and then I can use it to help the next student. And I thoroughly enjoy it.
Yeah, like I said, having a resource like you is something that I was so glad to just have the opportunity for. Like, and I thought it was pretty under wraps because you were pretty much just getting started when I got there, and I was like, yeah. It's like, shoot, no one else, like, does anyone else know about this? Like, I actually heard about you from I think it was Colin Motes first introduced me to the office, and I was like, because I think that the stage when a lot of the students that are in college, they have this kind of this passion, this half-baked idea, and it's not something that it's something that they want to talk about, but it's something that's a little bit reserved because it's still an idea, and you get a little self-conscious sometimes talking about things, and it's easier. It's really hard to dive in head first when there is so much to learn, like you said, and someone like yourself that like has experience just failing forward and doing it themselves. Like, I think in higher level education, a lot of the business professors, not so much at Findlay, but out there, a lot of the resources that are available to students, they don't have that real world experience that can really speak to, I've done this wrong, and here's how you can avoid those mistakes, but inevitably they're going to happen. And I think, yeah, that's just a great thing to get started. That's a great thing for students. Good.
I've heard that before, though, where students get frustrated at either other universities or different colleges within the University of Findlay, where they're like, well, they're teaching this, but they've never done it. And I feel like that was why Kirby saw my benefit, like the value in Carla, she's like, we need this, boots on ground person. And that's why I say, I don't know why I'm not that doctorate yet. I have another year before I'd be Dr. Carla, but I feel like that knowledgeable firsthand experience is like street smarts versus book smarts. And you can't do entrepreneurship without one or the other. You need both. And so I hopefully can bring that to like, this is what you should do. Don't reinvent the wheel. Like look at the people who are successful. What are they doing? Let's not reinvent the wheel there either. So some of them are just tips and tricks and a part of living it. Yeah. Boots on the ground for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And like I said, you didn't sugarcoat anything in our meeting. Like, you were obviously very kind and polite and everything, but like I walked away with stuff that I could actionable first steps. Like, okay, I need to do this. I need to, register the name. I need to get the LLC. I need to do these step by step. And I think people that I know this for myself, at least when you have this idea, having a first step is sometimes all you need to get going, and you keep, like I said, failing forward, finding out how the wrong way to do things, and then A/B split test, see this doesn't work. Different, social media strategies, different channels, different ways of posting, different schedules, all these things. There's no one right way to do things, especially when there's so many different types of businesses and audiences out there. What are some of the other so you've ran CrossFit 458, right, since 2015.
Yeah.
What are some of the things you've learned? In this environment, like, I have to applaud you surviving not just the pandemic, but like any kind of health and wellness business that you can sustain for that amount of time definitely requires some grit and some business knowledge. So what have you learned running that you use to teach other students?
Well, I've learned that what you think may work will not work sometimes. I think you just said that right before this, but that's so true. And it's mostly trial and error. But I have had enough time now to see how putting that time management into marketing the classes has had a return. And I've had enough time working at this job that, putting that unique value, like value-based service into what I'm offering has set me apart. So some of the things that I've learned from owning my business are ways that you can set yourself apart, ways to be transparent. During the pandemic, I was completely transparent with my members and said, I will do as much online since we can't come in and meet. We can still do this, but it's on your own. And it's even more important now that you're on your own. Even really, I had to brainstorm so many things during the pandemic. It's like, do you close? It was definitely a challenge, but for me, and what I teach in my entrepreneurship class here is, it takes the owner's decisions and abilities to make these like safety protocol, because you don't know. I mean, it could be pandemic, it could be I was sick, it could be it could be anything that causes your business to kind of have a hiccup or a non-productive month or months or quarter. And so I always had 2 to 3 months of overhead saved and ready. And when I say that, it's not a huge amount. My gym isn't ginormous. I'm not in a big metropolitan area. It's a smaller gym, and I do mostly personal training for, the gain of it. CrossFit really pays for itself, and the affiliate's kind of expensive. So, what I learned is if you are smart about your finances, you are transparent to your members and your clientele, whoever it is, your target market, and you have to pivot. When you can't walk in the door, well, how are you going to sell your product if it's a personal product? Well, there's the internet. So if you just stayed stagnant and waited for things to come to you, you will absolutely not thrive. And that's what I'm finding in my research as well, because I'm researching this. I'm researching and building this dissertation on, what makes a small business owner successful. Because so many fail, over 50% fail in the first 5 years. And to me, that's astronomical to have, 99% of our income in the United States made from small businesses, and yet half of them fail in the first 5 years. Like, something's wrong here. But to see the grit that it takes, the ability to time manage. I mean, if I showed you a chart of all the elements that it takes to make a business run successfully, I'm sure you're seeing it now and feeling it now that you run your own business, is you cannot let one sit stagnant too long, whether it's the hiring of coaches or the marketing or the finances or, just communicating and being personable to your members. You can be a great business person, but not be personal. I think that's one of those, you cannot let that box go empty. You have to be a personable person and be able to talk to your clientele and find out what they want,
Yeah.
So
That's
I
something.
just,
Yeah,
It's a
sorry,
lot.
not to cut you off. Sorry.
No.
What do you have? That's something I wanted to talk to you about as well. What kind of advice would you give to students or any young entrepreneurs who are looking to, create a network because they're still young, building a network that's not just relevant to their industry, but just doing something that helps others, and then creating people around them that can kind of create that mutual exchange of value.
Right. So that's extremely important is the networking and looking into what an incubator or what the Brite Center can bring you is that networking mentorship.
Hmm.
So when I see young entrepreneurs, I see the potential in them. They walk in my door like yourself, like I see your potential. And in the business world, if you walk into a busy room of business professionals or try to enter an arena, I say that like, hypothetically, an arena that you want to be in and you're not there yet, you're going to be disregarded as a student or a young person because you have less to bring to the table. Right. It's just fact. And this is where you say, like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. You have less to bring to the table, but when that one or two or three business professionals see your ambition, your ability to learn, your work ethic, I think that you start coming forth and people gravitate towards you, even if you have less, like real world experience and age under your belt. Like, I don't think age is important. Really, it's not, unless you're trying to like get a loan and need to be 18.
Yeah.
But, like it's that ambition and that willingness. So I see students now that come into my door and they're like, well, I think I want to do this. And I think even the words you're using are received by the business professionals around you and those that may be influential in your life. And if you're not confident, if, like I said, if you're not ambitious, if you are not willing to, sit and be quiet during a meeting while you're just learning and maybe follow up afterwards and talk about some of those points with one of those professionals, then you're not going to have that easy entry. You're really not going to enter that arena very easily.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll propel you if you can.
Mm-hmm.
People like sharing.
Yeah, I had an experience like that recently. The agency I'm working for now, we design clothing, and we do graphic design for wrestling apparel. They're the biggest outfitter of wrestling apparel across the country, and they get really busy this time of year because they're staffing up. Um, just to give you some context, their last 3 months of the year is busier than the first, is 5x busier than the first 9 months. So we really try and get processes in place. I came on board 2 months ago, and we're trying to get the process in place just to handle this much volume throughout the whole design team. There's 20 some of us. But to speak to that point, we have these creative meetings on Tuesdays where we get with a group and we're supposed to come up with and pitch a creative idea for the upcoming season, and we present it to the heads of marketing. And you have to have a foundation to your idea. It has to be fully curated, ready to go. It has to be relatable to the goal, whether it's a video ad campaign, whether it's something creative on the marketing side of things. And there's they gamify it a little bit, so there's cash prizes and there's incentives and stuff. And every week we've had like 7 or 8 of them so far. Every week I feel like I have the best idea. Like, I know I have so much faith in this idea. And then usually I'm the one presenting on my team, will get up in front of the very intimidating boardroom of the marketing professionals, and I will not articulate the creative idea I have, the belief I have in the idea to what I think it can be. So what are some practical tips you can give for someone that struggles kind of with the portrayal of their value? Like, if you have this business that you've put so much into, and you have this thing that you're passionate about, that you've done all this work into, how can you portray that to others and not just sound convincing, but portray that sense of value that it has?
Oh, so you're speaking to my heart. I have a similar challenge. Not with the gym. I feel like that came easy. And then here at the university, when I'm in front of my superiors, and like I said, I don't have my doctorates yet. So I know I have that feeling that I'm getting looked down on, or I'm not as good yet. So taking a step back, and actually I've been doing some leadership training with myself, with the help of Dr. Grant here. He taught a leadership class for my doctorate degree, and I said, I need this.
I would love to have Dr. Grant on the show. So you'd leave a recommendation. Dr. Grant is fantastic.
He's going to be the chair of my dissertation committee.
Is he really?
He just said that yesterday.
Nice.
Yeah. So we're going to hold him to that.
Congrats.
But
Yeah.
I know I have that challenge, and the nervous I get, the more I cut people off. Even things like that, I really have to work on it.
Yeah.
But when I get in front of my peers and I have something that I know, I have the clear set in my mind, even if I have notes in front of me, I just can't get it out as clear, and it doesn't sound as polished and as thorough as what I know I can give.
Yeah.
And so just recently thinking about, putting it on a pedestal. So just think about this. Like if you ask a kindergartner what he's going to do today, and they'll just be like, I'm going to go eat ice cream. And they're fun to listen to. They are hilarious. And you want to ask them that question, but when you ask someone else that maybe is intimidated by you, or someone who, isn't a good speaker or have those soft skills, they're like, well, and like that data processing in your brain just kind of like goes out the door. Yeah. Even if I had someone ask me, like the president of the United States, someone came to me and said, what are you doing today? I'd be like, have probably an appointment at 1:30. And then, because you don't know their intentions, almost like you don't know their intentions or how they're going to take it. Kindergartners do not think of that. And I'm not saying to speak like a kindergartner, but that mindset of we're always feeling like we're judged, or we're not good enough, or we have to say it in a certain way to be received. Take off the pressure of, not the importance, it's still important, but the pressure of how you're saying it. So let's use the example of when I spoke to Kirby about, I was just passionate about helping other people start businesses and how I had that challenge and passionate about what I did. She's like, girl, you just aced an interview and you didn't even know it. And that is the mindset that I need to return to when I'm speaking to my peers, those that are above me, or I do a lot of public speaking and my heart starts beating out of my chest. And I know they're there just to see me succeed. I did piano recitals as a child. That same feeling of nervousness being in front of people, but it is so fun to see the real Carla speak. And I have so much fun knowledge to share with you. I remember that before these speaking engagements, and I do way better. And to decrease that outcome. So I'll end this with, we just had a college business retreat, and there was a fun challenge they had with marshmallows. And I'm not sure you've seen the marshmallow challenge, but we talked about the strategy behind, we broke up into teams. Whoever got the marshmallow the highest won. You had to be strategic, work in teams, and you get nervous. You have a time frame, you get nervous, and then whoever has the highest marshmallow wins the prizes. And our marshmallow tower fell. But we put so much pressure in trying to get the highest marshmallow. We looked at the strategies behind the people who actually win this outside of the college of business little challenge. Kindergartners do the best. They don't really care. They're doing it for fun. They want to see the challenge. They love it. They're just, they're playing. Yeah. And the great Dana chair that actually brought the challenge to us said, he brought this data that said they had a $10,000 challenge for this same exact project. Whoever can get the marshmallow the highest. And he said all the teams failed. They all were so worried about getting the highest and winning that money that they failed. And if you translate that to what you just said, you said all of you are giving pitches and you all want to do the best and win the money or win the prize. Well, then they're not going to be as great. Like, go in fearless, and that's it. Go in fearless and hope for the best, and accept anywhere that it falls in between, because that's truly you and what you can give. Like, get rid of that pressure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of it comes from the pressure you put on yourself. Like, you're more scared of what you're going to say because no one else cares, right? That's why the 11-year-old is they can so easily articulate all these things in their head. Like, they don't care what other people think about them. And I think one of the biggest reasons I struggle with, articulating my ideas and, putting them out there with, the gusto that I have inside of me, and portraying that value that these ideas have, is because I'm scared of how Andy in 20 minutes will talk to Andy as he's giving the presentation, right? Like, why didn't you do this differently? You flubbed that. It's fear of the pressures that we put on ourselves, I think. So that's very useful. And because I had a job when I just graduated a couple months ago, and I'd been interning remotely for a company for 7-8 months, and just did so much for them. Like, really helped them out with their marketing, and I learned a lot. But when it came, they were very open about, okay, by the time you graduate, we want you to work here, but we're gonna have to have a job negotiation because they're based in North Carolina. And I built it up so much in my head, and I couldn't accurate. And when it came to the negotiations, I feel like, I'm not accurately portraying my value. And that was a tough internal dialogue, because you put in all this work behind it, and you build up that pressure, and you don't, when you get to that, that tipping point, and you feel like you don't, portray your value in the way that you feel you deserve, you kind of let yourself down a little bit. So I think you're right. Going in with, the gusto and the confidence and, the fearlessness, is something really actionable that I think I can use going forward. So thank you for that.
Good. You gotta think of this too. So anytime you negotiate with income, that is anxiety building, I think, for anyone, because that's your livelihood. But let's think about it as like the challenge I had $100 membership when I first started, and the number of people who I heard say, well, that's astronomical, that's crazy. And then I started to validate why, like I'm a trained professional, and I actually can do physical therapy with people, and so, the level of what I was doing, and the great equipment. And like I said, it was small scale, but it was immaculate. Like we had online training systems where I could deliver it online.
And that's rare for a CrossFit. Yeah. And that's not even that much for a CrossFit gym. Like I've seen CrossFit gyms that are almost $200 a month. Like I can't even imagine. But I mean, and they don't have anything else. They have, they have the 4-day classes. They don't have any licensed people on staff. They don't have the virtual. All they have is, the check-in Wi-Fi that you do all yourself. But yeah, that's portraying your values. It's a lot easier to do, I think, when you actually have, the knocks to back it up like you do. So
yeah. But if you lower that price too low, then people are like, well, it's not that good, like a car, like, like you expect it to be higher quality, you expect it to be nice. And when you set the price and people don't understand the quality, so that's why if you negotiated, like for that example that you gave, like if you negotiate, that's scary anyways, because you don't want to have them to say, oh, that's too much, sorry, bye. Usually they'll counter offer. But if you say with that negotiating, a validation. If they just said, give me a number, don't text me or write me anything else, that would be scary. But if you said, I'm basing this negotiation on, relocating or with zero benefits or with, so make sure you can validate too. Like, so I could validate why my price was high. If you can't, then you shouldn't just set a price that's low or negotiate low because you're not sure. So make sure it's like business. It's absolutely a business essential is knowing your worth and knowing when to change the price. My price has gone down actually, because the members I've had for a long time, I said, well, I paid off my gear, and I'm very transparent about that, which is not the best business practice, but that's my business. And that's what being an entrepreneur, like I can do whatever I want. When someone says, well, I can't afford it, I own the place, I'm having class anyways, please join us, or if someone says, like I need a different schedule, I said, we'll find 4 people and I'll create a class. And they look at me like, what? And I'm like, I own the place. That's the best part about entrepreneurship is you have that ability to set your pricing, your time frame, your, validating why you would change something. And that some people can't do that, or it's really hard. So your negotiating skills are a part of that, setting self-set prices, and need to start getting firm about that, Andy, because people are going to be calling you at midnight and saying, hey, I need this banner done by tomorrow. Can you do it? And if they know that you're just going to do whatever they ask, that can be overused as well. Just throwing it out there. So you have to set boundaries. But
yeah, absolutely. It's kind of, to your point, it's kind of framing the context of what you offer before you elaborate on what it's worth. Right. So a lot of it I'm learning is kind of the communication, it's all communication. Like you said, it's all communication of value, because if they don't understand what they're paying for, then they're probably not going to meet you on that, whether it's price or anything. Then if you're framing yourself on 2 different sides, then it's hard to meet in the middle, because you have a different understanding of what the thing fundamentally is. So I think that's really valuable. So,
but communicating with your clients and knowing what they want first, like maybe they just want a cheap banner that they can throw away when they're done, like, so being an entrepreneur, you can say, well, my price is usually this, but after hearing you say that you wanted something that is, not the quality that I'm usually making, I can do something quickly for this price. So you can always negotiate that in there too, where it's not the quality, but this brings into point that competitive analysis. If you brought up my competitors, which was awesome, because $100 isn't that much for CrossFit. So if I actually just showed them, without even showing them my qualities and extra value based services, like what I have that's qualified and above and beyond others. It's like, let's just compare to so go to another one and it's $140 and they charge you a yearly membership fee, so, you can just do that competitive analysis in your head too, or in like speaking with them, they could do their competitive analysis, but you have to have that value-based service, communication with them, whether it's online, in person, or be able to validate your cost for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. What are, you get a lot of students, you see a lot of different businesses. What are some of the most common mistakes that you see? I know the biggest mistakes probably I made were just overthinking things, like having a bias towards inaction rather than action. Like I was like, oh, I need to get this done first. I need this to look a certain way before I do this other thing. And once you create roadblocks around saying you can't do certain things because of something else, and it's really easy to justify that in your head because you want to create everything to the highest quality you can. You want everything to be perfect. This is your baby. This is my graphic design agency. This is something that I'm building. This is my favorite thing. It's easy to say that you are doing that in the service of quality rather than just procrastinating, if that makes sense. So what are some of the biggest mistakes you see that and any other the students that come to you?
Well, let's speak to your point first. Number one, if quality is by far what you have your standard on, like for me, it was the quality of my coaching. So I would never set it or put that second best or put that at a danger zone of having less quality. So keep that in mind. So that's almost like a different whole area where you should never put that in danger or say at risk of someone questioning your services or how it's going to your quality, right? Like what you're putting out, the quality product.
Yeah.
So if that's important to you and one thing you put on the top of your website, like the best quality, so keep that there, but you also have to do the time management. So that was like the time management piece tied in there. So still keep quality, but time management. So, all right. So the biggest thing that I feel like I coach people on from this standpoint is the lack of understanding in how all of those steps go in order, like what comes first, you can't start a bank account or this is when these costs go here. I think that's always an eye opener for the students, but the errors I see are not researching I'm just going to say the competitive analysis. Like, what is that market like? What is this product sold for other locations? Like how many people are selling this? When I ask them questions like that and they cannot answer, that to me is not a red flag, but an error. So when someone asked me when I started my business, so why are you doing CrossFit? I knew why I was doing it because of the quality. I knew where I was doing it because it was not a location within 120 miles. I knew, like how I had the steps, like this is where I'm going to buy my stuff. This is how I'm going to finance it. I had done almost like, you could probably ask me any question about when I was going to start my gym, about either CrossFit itself or how I was going to do the process. And the only thing I was confused on was, how do I get to put this into action? Right. So I had done I know where my competitors are. I know their rates. I visited their locations. I know how they do programming. I knew everything about it before I immersed myself and said, I'm going to do this. So tying this to my doctorate's research on why businesses fail, people feel it's either going to make them a lot of money. They have an assumption about it. It's going to make me a lot of money, or this one's going to be easy, or this is one that everybody wants, or I can't find this, so I'm going to sell it. But it's like, but did you do the research and find out if it's sold anywhere, or if anybody wants it, or if it's really going to make you money with that much overhead, or why you're doing it? And that is like one of the main reasons people fail. You lose interest. You actually are, if you're not invested in it, you're going to fail because maybe you can speak to this as well, but like you're thinking about it constantly. You're thinking about how to make it better, like where you're going to do this, what's on your to-do list, on your free time, like how can I get ahead, or what's on that to-do list that I could get a little bit farther ahead, or what new service can I add? Those should be things that are constantly going through your brain, not, I wonder who else is selling this. I wonder if this is for sale, another price, another location. And so though, if you don't have set in stone or a work in progress, that research component from a entrepreneurship, like you get passionate about what you're going to do. That's what entrepreneurship is, right? You're so passionate. I want to sell this widget. I want to do this service. But it's like, you have to open your mind to, okay, so does everybody want it? And what's the normal cost? Like that research component, if it's missing, I think when students come to me, that's the biggest piece where I'm at. I know there's lots of places that, like, if you go to the bank, they probably have another, like they didn't do their 12-month forecast, like if you go to, the lawyer, like, well, they didn't think about their policies. But from here, in a very unbiased, like position, I feel that it's the lack of understanding or not the full immersion of, this is going to be your entire life. If you start this business and you want it to be your income, you should know it front, back, side to side, inside to out, if it falls down, right? And so that part's missing. Very few students have come to me and said, I've done this. And so you did. You're like, I already have a website. I've already done this for years. I have the is it a dad in student athletics? Like I remember that. Like so it's like you were fully immersed. And so that's why when I said you come in ready, I'm going to tell you how it is and how to do it. But you didn't have that error. And how are you doing, right? Like, has it shown, fruitful?
I mean, I have a job now, so I make money doing it, which is nice. But yeah, it's a lot of it's, like I said, failing forward. It's, I started, helping, my father's, accomplices, like reaching out to these schools and saying, here's what I've done at Graham. Here's how I can help. And I got 2 jobs doing that and gathering testimonials from all the people I've worked with, all the people that I've surrounded with the projects, taking the time to meet with them in person, just pays leaps and bounds, because anyone can read an email and see, graphics and images, and they can't connect it to a person. Makes a world of difference. But I think the biggest thing I was found first was getting over that hump of making the personal connections in person. And that's the big reason, why I started this show, and was to connect with professionals and creatives that have some of these ideas. So reached out to those coaches. I ended up kind of doing not a 360 shift, but more of a pivot in kind of the services I offer. So before, if you remember, I was meeting with you more about building, the social media, creating, the top of funnel. And a lot of it was just wanting to work with athletic teams and doing, transient projects like sports graphics, something that's very kind of one time, see it on social media, wash your hands, that's in the trash now. And while that is a very good model to get business and make connections, because people see it once, they're like, oh man, he has the soft, he has, the hard skills, he can use these programs, he knows how to create something that's unique to us. I ended up shifting that more, using that when I started to do more long-term branding projects. So with the schools that, my father worked with, I did short-term graphics for them for a couple. I made a couple samples for them, sent them their way. And then 2 schools I set up meetings with to do long-term projects like a brand identity, something like recreating, and that's something more in the scope of recreating their logo and building a graphic system around that for them. So that way you're working with them for a longer period of time, but I would have needed, the short-term design work to get them to have met them in the first place. Like, here's this thing for you. Now this is what I do, can you listen to me on this longer service that I think can add a lot of value to you. So trying to really get your foot in the door, doing the one thing for them, and then open it up to the rest of your services and try and create a relationship that way. That was the biggest thing I took away from our meeting, aside from the other stuff, the top of funnel marketing. But I found that to be really successful in creating the relationships, because like I said, it was, as an introvert, to me, like, I didn't really believe in the business getting started. I was super passionate, but you're scared. Like, I was scared to try and give my knowledge to people. Like, I'm just a college student, I do this, I'm completely self-taught, I learned how to do this all myself. But getting your foot in the door with a kind of a low stakes project, like a one-time graphic, whether it's for graphic design, social media, and then piquing their interest. So there was so many, that was a lot of the outreach, what fell on deaf ears. And I think that was a good tester to kind of see what schools are really interested in making a relationship with you and really kind of value the stuff that you're giving them. And then having that kind of litmus test was a good way to kind of see if there's someone that you want to move forward with and then continue to work with in the future. So I still have those connections, and that was really valuable for sure. That's kind of how I took that was a practical application I took from that knowledge. But I think for designers and people who offer creative services, shifting to more of a long-term approach, and building those relationships is the biggest thing I've learned so far. So trying to not make it a one and done type of project, but something that you can come repeatedly back to is, and you see this in businesses, they call it, I think it's Pareto's law. It's like 80-20. So like you look at the 20% of what you're doing that gets you 80% of the results. And if 20% of your clients are giving you 80% of your revenue or your work for that year, then that's usually the ones you want to focus on the most. So that's been really valuable for me. Have you seen anything kind of like that manifest in your business?
Somewhat. I think that goes back to that time management. And if I had someone diagram the things that are important to them in growing their business, and they didn't have like an 80-20, or if the majority of the items that they chose to be important towards their business weren't towards income, I would question them. If they're like, well, I need to do this. Well, does that, like, I need to paint the wall and I need to, call this person. And it's like, well, you need to make sure that the majority of the things that you're doing, if you're not already, bringing in funds to pay for your business and to cover that overhead, then you need to put the majority of your time towards that activity. And even more than how much time you're spent making sure that you're having the money making activities at the forefront are those personal connections. So I can't even tell you the value of each one of those personal connections that you have. Maybe you can put a dollar amount on them, but even a time frame, like it is so important that even the, one time somebody wants something made that's small, a flyer or let's say like a postcard, and you blow it out of the water, you do a great job, and you thank them. And you're like, hey, I'm just hoping that you're happy and what you wanted was what I created. And your business was really important to me. And communicating, even with that smallest customer, could turn into a money-making potential for another customer. So those relationships that you're building, like you said, you go back and you touch base, like, remember who I was, and this is what I started with. You're building those connections, and you are really, it's a money-making activity. So even though you didn't walk away with a sale by following up with that postcard that you made, or, like the website that you created that was pretty basic, that relationship and how you treated it might end up making you the most money that you've ever had, because down the line, they're going to think of you first. They're going to refer you to others. They're going to call you when they need their next project. And so it's really hard for me to say, like, well, 20% of those 20% that my paycheck came from this week are the only ones that I'm really going to focus on this week, and the other ones get a response. I don't promote that as much as the activities. The activities are those personal connections. I don't care who it is. If it's, they got money in their hand, or they're the, CEO that you think they got, it could be someone that you unintentionally treated the nicest ever, because you were just having that moment where you're like, hey, how you doing? Oh, I see you dropped something. Let me help you pick it up. That person could change your life and turn your business around into a multi-million-dollar company. And those stories happen all the time, right? Like where you didn't know that one small project was going to lead you there. So you already kind of spoke to that, where you're like, I went back and now they have me doing these bigger projects, but it's your time and commitment towards creating that relationship and treating your clients like they really mean a lot to you, or that their business is important to you, whether it's the smallest or the biggest at that time. So you can follow those. They're all great at all of those theories and strategies on, money-making strategies may be really important to those that are millionaires. And I will tell you, I am not a millionaire, and my business was not intended to make the most money in the entire world. Not at all. My business was started because I knew I could do it at a level that I wanted, and was self-fulfilling as far as like making me feel happy, doing personal training and teaching classes, and I could be home at nights with my kids. And so I think it's the overall goal of your company. If you want to bucket those things as, is this going to make me a lot of money? We got to keep going this direction at a heavy pace. But I will tell you from the research that I've done recently, just great theorists like Peter Drucker, there's a Drucker Institute in California. He goes back to the personal relationships. It's your customer. It is who you are as a person. Are you humble? Are you able to communicate with people that will actually pay you in dividends? And if you're looking at the overall dollars as, this is how successful my business is, then that's a certain type of person. And I will tell you, I'm not that person. I would ask you, Andy, like, does this company make you happy? Are you so proud of what you're doing? Do you want to keep doing this? Is it something you can, be safe and provide a livelihood for yourself? Like that is important. That's a component of it, but it's not the first question I would ask you is like, oh, you racking in the money, you making all the money. And that's not, as a small business owner or entrepreneur, if that's your first, like, I would say goal and what you're highlighting, then I would say, look at the big picture, look at, make it a component. So as far as like great time management, absolutely need it. If that's the method that you use, good. If it's putting different aspects of what's important to your business, like how many do we name? Marketing, soft skills, hard skills, making sure that you're doing some kind of financial analysis and that you're registered with the government, like all of these things. If it's a part of it, that's great. I do want you to make money, but really are you happy and do you like doing this? And don't fail at the business because you lost hope. I want you to sell your business someday, like do a great job and then someone wants to take it over instead of like, I lost my gusto or I didn't feel it. Someone told me I wasn't doing a good job, so I lost interest. Like it's for you. That's what entrepreneurship is. It's for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I had Jeremy Slagle on the show last week, and he's a design studio based in Columbus, and since 2009, he's been able to take on freelance projects and make a very successful living out of doing it. Like, he's done all the design for Cedarville, Tiffin, Capital, designed their logos, done all this graphic work for them, and he says money isn't a thing to him. Like obviously it's a thing to him, but he focuses on, he says, to love people through your work and how you serve them, and the money will come, no question. So if you focus on how you can provide value to others and then make that your top of line priority, then as much restraint as it may take, then the money will follow. And I think you certainly do that through your contributions with Findlay and running your own business. So I want to really thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Where can people go if they want to connect with you and learn more about what you do?
Perfect question for that, Andy. I'm gonna reach over here and get a business card. So I don't know if it's easier for me to like flash this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Backwards. We can share my information, but Carla Treadway, Carla with the C, Treadway, Treadway, at Findlay.edu. I can help any students, any alumni, with any of those business ventures. And then outside of that, like not to put a personal plug, but I help I work for Putnam County and I taught business classes, and I still help other adults that aren't involved with Findlay. But that may be an ultimate goal at the end of my doctorate degree is then to consult with small businesses and people who want to get started with businesses and give them that, not that they can't find it on the internet, but personal help and attention, helping them start their business. But you can find me on LinkedIn. I believe that you have my connection there. I don't know if you can share that LinkedIn, but that would probably be the easiest way to funnel people towards me is either through the university email and or on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I'll be sure to link all of that where people can access it in the show notes and on YouTube and everything. But yeah, I can say firsthand that, you really helped me out, and I wanted to say thank you. And I would love to have you back on sometime to do a round two. I have a lot of questions I didn't get to, and but great. I can't thank you enough for your time, and thank you for everything.
For sure. Circle back when you got time. I will make time for you, Andy.
Awesome. I appreciate it, Carla.
All right.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Creative Journal Podcast. If this episode spoke to you, if you like one of the guests we've had on so far, please leave a like or a 5-star review on whichever platform you're listening to. And if you're feeling especially rambunctious and ambitious, leave a comment as well. I do read all the comments. Thank you, and I hope to see you next week for the next rendition and entry into the Creative Journal.